Well, here we are with my first video of me engraving my first gun. This is just a section of it. I still have a lot more to do on the gun, but I thought I'd break it up into sections so I don't try to condense, 90 hours of engraving into one video. Before I show you the video, I want to explain a little bit of what I'm doing when I'm engraving. I promise this won't take very long. Also, I have this little pointer square here. I didn't know how to make my mouse appear on the screen, so here we are with Mr. Square. Whenever I'm engraving, it doesn't look, the chisel that I use doesn't look like this. If you had a little point like this, it would just dig into the metal and that's all that would happen. What it has on it is this little flat spot on the bottom of it. So while it digs into the metal, like here, it rides along this flat part called a heel, and it creates these little curlicues. And that's what allows it to glide through the metal and create these little V-shaped grooves, like you see right here. I'm using a 120-degree graver. Some people use a 90, usually just for preference, not too many reasons to use one or the other. And that's it for now. I'll explain some of this later. It won't make sense now. But here we go. This is the first line I ever did on a gun ever. And you're gonna watch the whole thing in all its glory. I'll speed up the rest of the video, but we're gonna do this together. We're gonna watch this first line together. Amazing. So the pencil you see drawn on there, you can plan out the drawing in advance, and you can draw it out and then transfer a drawing onto metal. If you're comfortable, you can just draw it on there. Sometimes the design is really advanced and you'll want to have it pre-drawn out so everything is planned and then just transfer it. But for what I'm doing here, I just drew it on there instead of trying to transfer it. Doing this gun was actually a bit more challenging design-wise than I thought it was going to be. It's not hard to engrave, it's metal just like any of the other practice plates I used, but let me bust out the old pointer square. If you look at where I'm in, oh shit. Oh, okay, this is a disaster. If you look at where I am engraving in here in this real thin rectangular section, all the practice plates that I'd done in the past had been large, you know, squares, rectangles. I always had a lot of space to work with, but when you have these tiny little skinny spaces, it's a bit harder to fill them up and make it look good at the same time. You got to make sure it fits in there. You can't just throw whatever you want in there. It has to look like it flows correctly, like it belongs in the space. So a bit of a learning experience while doing this at the same time, but it went pretty well. So on this part, I'm doing background removal, and I don't have much video of it because, as you can see, for some reason, it was very out of focus when I shot it. I don't know why I didn't catch it, but I want to explain real quick what background removal is. So whenever I take this chisel and I dig it through the metal, it creates these little V-shaped grooves. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's this little dotted line outline here, right? It's essentially this little thing right here, only dotted. What I'm doing is I'm taking a flat graver instead of a V-shaped one. I'm taking a flat one and I'm riding it along this edge right here to create a little groove like this, and this little flat spot right here gives me a safe area away from the wall of my engraving. So then I can come back with a larger flat graver and I can take out more material, and I'm not at risk of hitting the wall of my engraving. What that leaves me with is kind of a recessed background. So this higher spot will be the design that you see when you look at the gun, and then this lower part will be the background, and I'll come in later with a stippling tool, which is a needle, and I'll hammer a needle into this thousands of times, so when I rub ink over it, the ink holds into those little dimples on the metal and creates a black background, and it gives it a lot of contrast. I didn't show a lot of this just because there wasn't much to see given how dull it is, but on this part of the video you can kind of see the background become a bit shinier, which is me removing material, and it leaves a like a recessed area on the sides of the design. And this is what it looks like when the background is removed. All the shiny parts are the areas that have been removed, and I'll go in later and stipple them so that it accepts paint better. And right here, I've already done some of the fine shading. I'm doing some shading on this banner right now. I tried out two different shading styles, and you'll see the different style on the other banner. If your shading isn't good, isn't done properly, it can almost ruin a lot of what you're doing. If it's not good enough, it won't bring the engraving to life the way it could. Shading is a very important part, and it's what gives a normal engraving a very deep look to it, a very 3D look. It makes it look like things are wrapping over and under each other, and if it's not done properly, it just kind of ruins it. part here was really tricky. Trying to shade these really small sections is a lot more difficult than the larger sections. On the larger sections you can fit, you know, maybe a dozen shade lines, if not more. On some of these small parts I could only fit maybe 2 or 3 shade lines, which was kind of my fault for leaving only that much material for me to shade, but actually you can see one of them right here. Gosh dang it, did it again. It's high quality shit. This little piece right here that I'm about to do on that one really sucked. Yeah, see, there's me getting angry at it. Like, what am I supposed to do there, you know? I basically just filled it up with all the shade lines I could to make it dark, and that was about all I could do. I couldn't really fit any more lines on it. Like, the tool was just too big. This is that other banner I was talking about too. The other one had a lot more close together shade lines. This one has a bit heavier but more spaced out. I wanted to see what both of them look like in the end. So we're just gonna have to wait to see what they look like. This is probably one of the most fun parts of doing any engraving. This is what I was talking about earlier, called stippling or stifling. I think it's called stippling. I'm using this punch and it's sharpened down to a needle point, and it hammers into the metal thousands of times and leaves these little dimple crater looking dealios, so that when I go back, once everything is done, I'll take paint and I wipe this paint over it, and then it holds onto those dimples, and well, you'll see what it looks like. It's kind of like those adult coloring books you see, only this one's a lot more hardcore because I'm doing it on metal, and the only color is gray. That fancy editing. It took me a while. Oh, and a dramatic fade out. Just wait, it's gonna fade back in. It's always really exciting getting to the end. Try not to rush it. You never want to rush what you're doing. Right there I'm checking to make sure that the tool is still pointy enough. Last thing you want to do is rush what you're doing at the very end, because it's pretty easy to miss where you're hitting that punch, and if you run the punch over one of your designs, it stands out pretty well. You can't really hide it. Only reason I'd want to rush it is because I just, you know, you're that close to seeing the thing getting done. Plus, whenever you stipple whatever the background, you kind of get a preview of what your design's gonna look like. This is, I'd say, probably the best part of doing any engraving, is getting to put paint in it to really see what it looks like. You don't think it's going to look like what it does, but it does. Also, after watching the video back, I realized Oops. Alright. I didn't put paint in this little corner the first time around, and it really bugs me. I do it the second time, but I forgot the first time, and I don't know if I can ever forgive myself. Oh. Well, if you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to be making more videos from here on out. There's still a lot of metal left on the gun for me to engrave. If you have anything, any suggestions, anything you do or don't want to see more of, just let me know. If you want to see more of a certain part of what I'm doing, or maybe explain a little bit more or explain less, I can do that too. I'm not really making these videos for me, I'm making them for other people to enjoy, because I mean, I'm the one who's sitting there doing it. I don't need to watch it again. But hand engraving isn't really very well known. A lot of time when I tell people that I'm an engraver, they just assume that I'm a laser engraver, or you know, a machine does it or something. They don't know that I actually sit there and take a chisel and hand push it through the metal, or it's assisted by an air hammer, but you know what I mean. So if you want to see more, if you want to see me explain more, just let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to change anything about the video.